Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm here. I'm
You're
good.
here. Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back to our listeners. We are going to be doing part two of our three-part mini series of the evolution, I guess, of training and racing and where you may be on that spectrum and at what point do you need to be in different parts of that spectrum. So we did part one, which was learning to train in our last episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about where most people in theory should be spending probably the bulk of their time, which is training to train, which was always, yeah, my favorite place to be quite honest. I love to race, but I really love to train. So I'm excited to dive into this topic with you today, Michelle. How about you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming off of coaching a high school swim team season, right? We just finished and we just went to states. And so like this topic or like this training progression is really right at the top of my mind right now, largely because like we had 3 months with those kids and our meet started like 2 weeks into the season. And then we're pretty much every single weekend for 3 months. I mean, there were a couple of weekends where we didn't have a meet, but it was like the whole season was set up and it was like the only way really to do it was to like the training to win, which will be like what we will talk about next time. But it's like, I feel like this training to train like piece of the puzzle is it's so easy to overlook it. And for any athlete that is impatient or likes to race a lot, like likes to race frequently and wants results like right now, which again goes back to the patience thing. It's just so easy to skip the training to train. But like what I see, this is what I literally just saw happen is that athletes that skip the training to train and just go straight into the training to win, which is just like I want to be like training at race pace or like hard and fast all the time is that they might have earlier results, right? Like you might
Hmm.
do well. Like if you jump right into the training to win phase, you might have like decent results early on. And then it just totally stagnates. So like
Hmm.
every single time you go to race, you're just doing the exact same thing. And it can be really frustrated versus like if you embrace this training to train philosophy and show some patience and train in a way that allows you to train bigger later, which is the whole idea, then later your performances will skyrocket and they'll be like very joyous. Like you'll have better performances later if you manage this like progression better. And yeah, the patience piece of it, I think, is probably the main thing that gets in the way of people
Absolutely.
executing this phase properly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe not
absolutely.
everybody, and it would depend on your personality, right? Like, what are you looking for out of the training? But yeah, so I wrote down some notes, of course, about like training to train and like what does it mean, and so we can just kind of riff off of like each of these points. But like the first concept, like that I consider around training to train, like what do we mean about this? And it's literally the developing your capacity to do more, right? And so like when we get into the more is more with the training, it's in order to be in order to build your capacity, you have to be able to train frequently, train consistently. And that's not just over like 1 week, but like over months,
Months.
maybe
Yeah.
years in
Years.
some cases,
Yeah.
right? And you wouldn't be training to train straight for years without ever doing like a training to win phase, right? But even after a training to win phase, you would go back into like a months long, ideally months long of a training to train phase where the whole goal is to improve your capacity to handle load in a way that then allows you to increase like the pace and the intensity at the distance later. And like for Ironman, it's really I feel like it's really straightforward for Ironman. Like you cannot race an Ironman if the distance itself is like if completing the distance is
Hmm.
the biggest challenge, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no racing
Right.
that Ironman, but literally it would go the same thing for like a 5K or a 10K. Like for somebody who's a non-runner and they're coming in and they're like, I want to race a 5K like as fast and hard as I can. Like, okay, great. Like, can you like what is running a 5K like for you right now? Oh my gosh, like I can't run for more than 4 minutes at a time without needing a walk break. Okay, so like we're gonna start there. Right. And so this
Right.
goes for kind of like any distance you're going for, whether and pick the sport, right? It could be for swimming, it could be for hiking, it could be for running, it could be for triathlon, it could be for any of the things. But if as long as the distance of what you're trying to do is a challenge for you in any way, then like going for pace at that is premature.
Yeah,
Right? Like the goal is
absolutely.
like, let's make whatever distance you're going for, build your capacity to complete that distance in a way that is like no big deal.
It's yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that and I'll throw in ultra distances, although a lot of my
Yeah. I mean,
experience
and
has
that
been
gets
around
tricky and
ultra.
sticky because like
It
100 miles
does.
is always going to be
But I think that a
a
lot of
challenge.
athletes still get wrapped up in this idea of like I have to do my long runs at a pace. I have to do my easy runs at a certain pace because if it's slower than that, then it's not meaningful or I'm not good or I don't know. Throw in whatever judgment they want to use. When the reality is that 100-mile race for most of those athletes, right, unless you're at the very tip top, is going to be a race of completion. And you will hopefully get better year to year, but there's really only a 1, 200, depending, I guess if you have all the time in the world to recover, maybe you could do more, right? But it's pretty taxing on the body. And so you're looking to build up the durability that will allow you to complete the race, not so that's why, yeah, it gets really frustrating, right? When you try to encourage, like, it doesn't matter what the pace is, just time on your feet. Like that's all we're going to be doing. You're going to be doing a lot of hiking, especially if you're doing a hilly
Mhm.
course in the West. So I completely agree, and I think and Ironman can get a little challenging that way too, because you're not going to run a marathon off the bike and in a training ride. But over time, for a lot of first timers, it should be just about completing the distance, right? Like it's just
Mhm.
about getting it done and having a fun day and fueling yourself well. And then once you've done it, right, you know what it takes, then you can start to think down the line about, pacing or strategies or winning or PRing or Konas or anything like that. And I'll also go to say, which I think I would have to take, it'd be hard for me to take my own advice, but if you've stepped away from the sport for a long time, right, your first race back should also not include a lot of judgment around like, how you're going to finish that race, right? So, yeah, training to train. And again, from a coach, I've tried this year to limit my taking on of athletes that are only training to race because in the past, have taken on athletes, they'll step away for a long time and then they'll, hey, reach out, I've got a race in 3 months. I want to get ready.
Oh my
And I'm like,
gosh.
well,
That's the most common. Is that the most common
yeah,
scenario? Like all my new athletes, every new athlete that comes to me is
I
like,
gotta, I
they
got a
have a
race.
race
And then,
in 3 months.
yeah.
And you're like, okay,
And
like
what have you been doing?
it
And
is
some people have been
super
doing,
tricky as a coach to work with that,
yeah, it is.
because
It
like
is
I
really
want to help you like do well in a way that you feel good about. But
right.
like, because here's the thing, and let me just make a comment about that. All right. So like athlete has a race in 3 months and they come to you with like a decent degree of fitness, like, so it's not like a giant stretch, but it is still like going to be somewhat of a stretch. They come to you and they want to do well. Like the problem is, and this is the problem for the coach, is if I train them to do well at this race and they have early success, then probably what I'm doing is limiting their capacity to do as well as they could next year. Right. And so it's like, and I like to look at like big picture things and being
Yeah.
like, well, here's like the intermediate step of you can do well this year, but if we leave a little bit on the table for you to like keep building off of, then, like next year you'll be even better and the year after that if you want. And it like when you watch like the best athletes train, they fully understand that this is like it could be a 3-year process. Right. And not to say that you're never including any like, pace work or intensity
Yeah.
work. You're not
Intensity.
racing it
Right.
like you are, but like the fitter you are, the faster you can recover and the more work you can do and all that. And then if you take the time to develop that properly and appropriately early on, then it's like you expand your capacity of what you can achieve later down the road too. So I always do feel a little bit like I know how to get an athlete to be able to do a race pretty well in 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
we can do that, right? Like it's risky. The injury risk is higher. The illness risk is higher. As long as you have space in your life, like it would probably make it happen. It's still not going to be as good as the race you could have had if you gave us like a year to do it. And it's not as good as what you could do if you had long term focus and thinking like in 3 years, this is what I want to
Right.
achieve. But it's largely
Yeah.
because yeah, it's a different approach, and I hesitate to do it, but I will say sometimes I do, depending on the athlete and, what it is they want. Like, there
Yeah.
are times where I'll be like, I'll kinda skip, like, what I think is the ideal timing and progression to kind of just go like, well, you know what, the athletes, like, this isn't an athlete that's like trying to make the Olympic team, you know, like this
Right.
is just an athlete that wants to feel good about what they're doing. Okay, like we'll do it. But I do think you're limiting, if you're going for immediate success, you're limiting your future potential success.
Yeah. And I think you're making it more stressful on yourself overall. I think there's a lot more added weight, both to the training sessions and to the outcomes, the race outcomes. I've also, I don't, most of the athletes that then, and a lot of these athletes will then step away again, like after the race is done. Oh, I'm going to
Hmm.
go and do an off season, and and they'll do some CrossFit, or whatever. I don't know, right? Nothing. I always give CrossFit a hard time, but they'll just jump into classes, spin classes, the basic, train, what they think is doing themselves a good deal of good for their baseline health. And a lot of them, I do get the feedback, well, it was just really stressful. It was really stressful to do that build. And it's like, well, it didn't need to be, right? But we were under a time constraint. You had race goals, and yeah, you can't mess around then. But if you were to give me 6 months, even just double the time, like, it wouldn't need to feel so stressful, and likely the outcome would have been better anyway. So
Oh
I'd
yeah, for
probably
sure.
take people on too, because I do this all the time, right? Like they've worked with me over the year, 10 years or more, and they're like, step away, come back, and I don't know. So I talk a big game, but ultimately I want to help people too. And it's a fine line, right? Of like,
Yeah.
are you helping them? Yeah, I guess in the short term you are, but are you limiting their potential for another race down the line? Yeah, maybe. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So if we want to be really clear about what we're talking about, like training to train, what we mean is you're trying to train frequently, you're trying to train consistently, you're trying to accumulate as much load as your body can recover from. And depending on where you're starting from, that the level of like what your body is able to handle and recover from might not be that high, which means that you have to start with short sessions that are quite easy, and they might feel like that kind of felt like nothing, like that kind of felt like it wasn't that hard. So it wasn't like in your mind, it's easy to think if it wasn't hard, it wasn't good stimulus or that kind of thing. But you're like, great, do it again tomorrow, right? And then do it again tomorrow and do it again tomorrow. And you just keep building on that, taking into consideration, like, and this is a problem for, say, like, here's an example of a swimmer who wants to start doing triathlon and wants to start running. And this was me, like, I mean, 3 decades ago or whatever, but like, I had an incredible aerobic engine from years of swimming and swimming very high volume, right? Like there are times where I don't know how much I was swimming, but 40K a week. I mean, I was swimming a lot
Huge.
in high school. And so, my heart was like pretty well trained, and so to go out and run like for 8 or 10 miles really wasn't a big deal for me, like cardiovascularly. Like I could do that. I could breathe my way through it. Like that part was fine. And because of that, and because I didn't know anything about training and especially running, and I was run training the way that I would swim train. But like, of course the issue with that is the tendons like get worked in running in a way that they don't in swimming. And so if I'm if my heart is totally fine to do a 2 hour workout, and then I go and I am running for 2 hours in a way that like is stressing my tendons, like the the challenge I had, the knee pain, hip pain, IT band, yeah, like you pick the
Like,
thing, right?
yeah.
And I was like, why do I was injured for like the first 3 years I started running. I was injured like every couple of months. And I would be so frustrated, but I did not put it down to like, I'm doing too much too early. And again, you got to remember, this is back in the 90s. There are no coaches for like what we were doing. So it was all just, I got myself into a group where there were a lot of good, like more experienced athletes than me. And because I had swimming as a background and I was capable. And so I guess like that's maybe a
Mm,
key point here, is that like, just because you're capable in the moment on the day of doing the big workout still doesn't mean that that workout is the most appropriate thing for you. Because if it's an overload on your tendons in a way that your tendons are not prepared to handle, then this stress over time will result in injury. It will result in it could be a month. In my case, it was typically like 3 months off at a time. I would run
Mhm.
for like 2 months, and I would take 3 months off because my knee was screaming at me, right? And then I would get back, and I did not learn the lesson. Just right back to like, I have to make up now for lost time, so I have to, run even more. And that was me like completely not training to train.
Mhm.
And I think that like I like that the whole concept of training to train feels really appropriate in my brain because it's a reminder that like there's more to come and that I'm just
Mhm.
being patient right now, and that if I build my capacity, I'll be able to handle more later, which is ultimately the goal. And especially for running, building at the rate of your whatever's the slowest adapting system, that's the one that we have to build at. And for running, it is tendons. And I tell swimmers that all the time. Like whenever a swimmer comes to me and wants to add running in, I'm like, look, you're going to think that this feels like nothing, this stupid 30-minute little jog, that you're doing. But like, it's what we're like, don't think that we're training your muscles or we're training your heart or we're not. We're training your tendons right now. You just handle the load. And then, like,
Yeah,
once your tendons are there, it's great that your heart is in a great place because, like, then it will come quicker. But yeah, training at the load of your tendons is key with running.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I had a point to make there. I've commonly said this to athletes that have come from either another sport, right? And they're getting into triathlon. Maybe it's I haven't had too many pure swimmers come in. I have had a lot of ex-runners or collegiate runners, and so it's a little different, but, I have an athlete right now that I'm working with that's come from, and I don't think she'll mind, an elite rowing background, and very competitive, very strong athlete, and I am hoping to instill upon her that this run ability is going to take some years, right? And it has to be like we can offset the fitness, with the bike and the swim, right? And allow her tendons and her joints and her muscles that she hasn't had as much experience in training over the years adapt, right? Being able to handle, because again, with running, and that's what I say for everyone, it's yeah, just like you said, run consistency. I mean, same for everything, but I think running in particular because it's for some reason, people have a hard time letting go of metrics and pace, right? I don't know why, but it's hard on the body. It's very, very difficult to it's a challenging sport, and you even see this at the elite level, right? They're always kind of riding a fine line between being in tip-top shape for a PR and injury, and so that's a little different scenario, but and maybe it could get down to other issues around the sport of running or that particular runner, nutrition, durability, strength training, right? All that sort of stuff. But I think there's also a component of running's a hard sport on the body. And so you have to allow time to adapt, to be able to run consistently, then to run the volume that we need, then to add in the or neuromuscular kind of is sprinkled in early on, but to add in the intensity and the race paces and the PRs and all the goals that people have down the line. Mm, I'll just bring this up very briefly, but I just saw a comment on the socials around someone had a big PR, and they're attributing it to a new training style, let's say. And the reality, I'm gonna go on it's not even that big of a ledge, like, is that they're now at the point where they have been running consistently for a long enough time to finally see the fruits of that consistency over time, right? They did a lot of work during getting their durability, doing the easy work, right? And now they are adding in a lot more intensity. If and I don't know if they recognize this or not, but if they had tried to do that early on, it would have resulted in injury, overuse, setbacks, potential, just like I'm gonna give up because I suck, right? Or whatever the stories they were gonna, people tell themselves. But I'm fairly certain they're attributing it to the coaching and the new style of training, which involves a lot more intensity without recognizing that it's actually just the years now, the decade plus they've been putting in to finally get those breakthrough performances that they were looking for. So just a note on training to train also involves like the years you've done the work over and over and over again and taking recovery and taking your peak season and then learning new mechanisms or new methods to train. But all of that time, the time under the curve, that's what I always say. It's the integration that matters, not the specific workout
Yeah. Yeah.
per se.
And that
Yeah.
leads right into like the sort of the next point that I had written down is about the adaptation. And one thing that sort of even before when I was a newer coach, and I would say that like I was watching for patterns and I was learning things, because I'm coaching a bunch of athletes and kind of seeing how does this, like, when we do this, what's the result? When we do this, what's the result? Blah blah. And so there would be times where I might like, say we had a race and there were 6 athletes that all did the same race. Like, two of them did really well, did like really well. Two of them did okay, and two of them didn't do so well. What we would see then is that regardless of how the race went, like on the Tuesday after, say, like, a couple days later, there were a couple of them that were like, I'm ready to go again. Like, I feel really good. I feel fine. And some of them are like, I'm wrecked. Right. And it kind of doesn't even matter like how well you did. Like, it can be the case that you're not that fit, but you pulled it out magically on the day because
Mhm.
you're super gritty and like you did something or you
Yeah,
have
which
some
is great,
talent and you have
right?
something, you
Sure.
pulled it
Yeah.
out. Great. But then like the cost of that is
Oh, yeah.
so much higher for that athlete. Right. So like a concept that I learned early on, but I can't say that I attributed or like totally understood it, the mechanism behind it, the way that I understand the mechanism behind it now. But it was an early learning that I had that the fittest athletes recover the fastest.
Yep.
Right. So like the fitter you are, the harder thing you can do. You can like go to the training camp in this. Remember when training camps were like a big thing, and
Yeah.
like every
Yeah.
spring everybody would go to the training camp and then they would just beat themselves to shit. Like, right. I
Yeah.
love that. Like, I would
Oh,
go
I
to
love it.
I went
Love
to
it.
like Hillary Biscayne's training
Yeah.
camp, Smash Fest, like let's do it. I loved being smashed from that. And as long as you have like a huge amount of fitness base going into that, you can smash yourself for a week, take 2 or 3 days to recover, and then you're going to be like back on and like able to train again. If you don't have a really solid amount of fitness under you, and then you go into
Destroyed.
that like smash fest environment, you may actually perform super well like during the week. Like, you may do that, like you may execute that pretty well just based on adrenaline and peer pressure and the environment and not having work or whatever. But then if what happens is you have to take 7 to 10 days of really light training after because you're just in such a deep hole and you're in the gutter, then that training camp didn't actually do you any good because your
Right.
overall load ends up
That was
being less than if you just would have put in a medium level week the way that you've been doing. And then you could follow that up with another medium level week. Like, the 2 weeks combined might
better
have
for you.
been bigger and better than like one big giant week and then 7 days of just exhaustion and being in the gutter, being sick, getting injured or whatever. And so I really learned that the fittest athletes recover the fastest. And that goes right along with this like training to train. It was like those are the athletes that had trained to train. So even if you're gonna put in like a really big, heavy week, in order to benefit from that week, because again, we've talked about this before, that benefit of training happens between sessions.
Yeah.
Right? It happens when you're adapting to the session that you're doing. So it's not about being able to do the work. It's about being able to recover from the work that you did. And
Right.
the deeper your base, like the bigger your foundation, the sturdier, your foundation is, the more work you'll be able to do and recover from.
Right.
And like,
Right.
that's the whole point, is like,
Right.
how fast can you recover? And when we're training to train, what you're doing is when you get to like the race specific kind of training, your recovery from that will be really quick because you have such a giant base underneath you. And that's what the training to train phase is about,
Right.
allowing you to recover faster.
Right. I totally agree. I actually kind of phrase it as I don't know if I came up, I doubt I came up with this because I'm always reading and ingesting other
Yeah.
coaches' knowledge. It might have been Steve Magnus maybe in one of his on coaching podcasts because I haven't listened to him recently, but I've been listening to him for probably, yeah, 15, like early
Yeah.
coaching days. And I think he had a philosophy of like, there's certain sessions, the stretch sessions, right? That you might be able to do. Yeah, pull it out of your ass, right? Like, some super hard track session, but the cost that it takes, right? For you to do that session when you're unfit is very high. And like you just said, there might be a damaging component to doing that
Hmm.
session actually. Like instead of doing whatever key session it is, you need to either take it down a notch, take the paces down a notch. Well, this is actually then training to you're accepting where you are and training to that level versus like where you think you need to be, which is there's often this disconnect of when athletes are thinking about their races. It's the mindset is still on the race, even when they're in a training to train base. They're still thinking about, well, how will I perform? Right. And it's like you just have to ignore it, like forget about it. Like you might have that goal out there, right? That race coming up, but it's really about like, what can I do today? And then how do I recover? And then what do I need to do tomorrow? All right. And that's the basis by which you make the most, well, maybe not the most gains, because like we talked about, I do think there are cases where you can put in some really big efforts short term, probably maybe even have some early season performances, but then are you undermining the later season or the years down the road? Probably. But yeah, and a great way to gauge, like, are you getting fitter, right? With the people are like, well, I don't have any races, so how am I? What's fun? I don't know how I'm gauging. I don't really. You can gauge almost every day, although I don't recommend it. But say you have a key session, let's say 8 by 400 or something, 8 by for a runner, and that first couple weeks you have to do it at a certain pace with a certain rest, right? Then in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, you're doing the same set but with a little bit higher pace, or you're doing the exact same set, same paces, and you're recovering much faster. Like, it doesn't wreck you. And that's really like there's this whole science around recovery. Even the recovery intervals, I think, can be really useful. When you get fitter, you don't need as much recovery. You can get your heart rate down.
Hmm.
I often ask athletes as we're rebuilding, like, what is your heart? How quickly does your heart rate come back down after those hard intervals? And when your heart rate comes back down very quickly, that means you're good to go and you can do another one and another one and another one, right? And trying to get athletes to hone in on, like, what do I actually need in the moment today? And so in probably the last 5 years or so, I've started giving ranges of intervals for swimming and for our intensity days, for our key sessions. It's like maybe it's 6 to 8 400s, right? Well, how do I know? Well, when your heart rate doesn't come back down and you really start to struggle and you lose form and you start to grip, right?
Yeah.
That's probably when you need to relax, breathe in. Maybe you could get one more there is a certain, if you have better breathing, form, relaxation, you're not gripping the session, then I think you can usually get a little more out of yourself. And athletes often don't have that as their default. Like, it's to go harder, grip harder, try harder, strain, right? There's still a limit probably because that's based around your fitness and you can relax into it, maybe get one or two more intervals than you could if you were really straining for that interval. So yeah, absolutely. Recovery, both on the larger scale, like how quickly you're recovering from a session, and then recovery within the session. VO2
Hmm.
max, like how quick can you recover from that VO2 max
Hmm.
effort? That will show
Hmm.
your fitness, and getting really good at recovering faster means that you're building a huge base to then handle harder and more work down the road. So, yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
really key concept for people to understand is that all of that easy work that you're doing, where you're going slower and easier than you're capable of going, what you're actually training there is your ability to recover from the harder intervals when they come. And I see this even with, say, like the masters swimmers that I coach, the ones that do a ton of volume on the side, because this is what I'll say, like most of the time, the masters workouts, it's twice a week for an hour. I just tend to give them like, here's a key quality set for the most part, like they're challenging sets. My expectation is that on the side, they're swimming in the ocean on the weekends or they're doing some easy volume on their own. Like these are not the only two swim sessions you have during the week. If they are, those swimmers will absolutely plateau and they will not get faster. The ones that will get faster are the ones that are doing like extra training on the side. But what's fascinating is that when they get to the point where, they're doing a hard set and the intervals are somewhat short, right, and tight, for sure, the the ones that have done the more total volume of swimming during the week are the ones that are able to like keep building at the end of the set, or it's like the last round. And the fittest one is going to be the one that is able to like still find another gear somewhere, or still be able to hold there, versus the ones that don't have the base, meaning that they have not done a lot of easy swimming lately. They'll be the ones that will fade and not complete the set with as much like oomph or speed, or their technique falls apart or whatever. And so knowing that, Like if you struggle to understand, why am I doing all this easy work? I'm capable of going faster. I want to go faster. I should be going harder because like that's where the stimulus is or whatever. If you're reminding yourself that like the whole goal of that easy session is to improve your recoverability so that when you go to the track to run, or when you go to do the hill repeats on the bike, or you go to do the hard intervals in the water, that you're improving your recovery capacity so that you can repeat those intervals and hold for longer and just recover fast. So yeah, again, recover faster in the session. And then like the next day, like I feel great. I feel fine.
Mhm.
I can train again today.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
great. That is the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about with training to train. But you also like led me into what is the third point that I wrote down here about like what the training to train is, when you talked about like the progression of the workouts,
Mhm.
right? Where you're like, okay, so maybe in the beginning you start off and you're doing like 5 by 3 minutes with 3 minutes easy in between, right? And pick
Mhm.
the sport, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, like, but there's several ways to progress that. You could go up to 6 by 3 minutes. You could go to 8 by 3 minutes. You could go to 10, 12, 15 by 3 minutes is a really big step. But like if you're doing Ironman, like that might be a
Yep.
workout that you do. And then so that's one way to progress it, is to do more intervals. Another way to progress it would be like, I'm going to do the intervals a little bit faster, which I can do because it's not harder, right? So it depends on, like what is the goal for the session? And so
Mhm.
you don't want to be red zoning, for 15 times 3 minutes, but it's still staying like it when you're raising your threshold, then you're like, well, if I used to be able to run those at 8 minute pace, but now I can run them at 750 pace and the strain on my body is the same. Like that is an increase, that like, that's a measure of fitness. The other thing, and this is what we talked about with the recoverability, is that you can then uh, decrease the recovery time. Well, we used to take 3 minutes off. Now we're taking 2 minutes off. Now we're taking 1 minute off, like 10 times 3 minutes on 1 minute recovery, right? Like that might be your race specific session that you're doing in the training to win phase, right? But if you start there with, 10 times 3 minutes with 1 minute recovery from the very beginning, then it's like, where are you going to go when you get to the training to race or
Right.
training to win phase, right? Like
Mhm.
you haven't left yourself like room for progression. And
Right.
one of the key elements of like a key training philosophy or training element is progressive overload. So if you start right away doing like the key race specific workouts from like the beginning, when you're not really even fit enough to do them, all you're really doing is like setting yourself up to have a bad experience doing it, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not going to go as well as it could have, right? And it's going to
Mm.
feel terrible. And then you might have in your brain like that's a terrible session, right? And you might
Right.
implant in your brain that like, I'm afraid of that session because I remember the first time I tried to do that and I wasn't fit enough to do it and it went really
Mhm.
poorly and it felt bad. And then maybe like the next time you
Mhm.
try to do it, your brain's like, oh, I remember how that session went last time. This is going to suck. And like,
Right.
maybe
Right.
if you would have waited until you were ready to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
like, this is an aside from my point of view, but like, oh my God, there's an athlete that I talked to who's like pretty new into triathlon, hired a different coach, came to me to tell me about like, he like this key bike workout, excited to do, like, I get to do this. Like, listen to this. I'm curious to even see your face. 2 times 20 minutes. Like, coach, I'm doing the 2 times 20 minutes bike session, tomorrow. And I'm like,
Okay. What?
you're a brand new coach. Like in the second week of you guys working together, gave you 2 times 20 minutes on the bike. Really,
At
like,
threshold?
okay, the threshold. I'm like, I'm like, I literally can't say anything because it was like, you didn't pick me. So like, I'm not going to bash that, but here on this podcast, I'll bash it because he's not going to listen to this. But I was like, oh my God, like what? Like, okay, so
Yeah.
where are you going to go from there later?
Yeah.
Like, where are
Yeah.
you going to go from there? Like, you're just going to jump right into like a key session that you're excited to do because this is the key session. You haven't done any of the work to like build up to that, to A, allow it to go well, B, allow yourself to recover well from it, C, like, where are you going to
Yeah.
go after?
I mean, I
I
could
just
see.
was like, I can't say
Yeah.
anything. I was like, that's good luck.
Good luck. Yeah. What do you say to that? I don't know.
Nothing.
That's
I said,
like,
good luck.
yeah, that's when I'm often open to athletes telling me, "Look, did you have sessions that other coaches gave you that you really enjoyed? Did you have sessions you really like?" I'm open to hearing.
Yeah.
I have in the past worked with athletes that would consistently bring up other coaches that they were not working with and saying how they liked them and this and that and, "Oh, I miss them." And I'm like, "Oh, go work with that coach then. I mean, like if they're so great, like why are you working with me? Anyways, yeah. But, I could see with a new athlete, if they are doing, like, a lot of trainer sessions at the moment, right? And maybe they're training for 70.3 or, maybe Olympics or sprints, I don't know. If they're gonna train by power, I could see doing an FTP test within, but I would still not give it in the first couple weeks. I would probably do a lot of base work, looking at their heart rate, and then say, maybe after we get some consistency, then we can hone in on power a little bit more. Yeah, so that'd be my first order of like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
But it's a very real phenomenon though of like leaving yourself a place to like grow to, right? And like, and again, patience is such a massive component to that of being able to say like I want to be able to do and this workout but waiting until it's the appropriate time to do that workout feels like a key
Mhm.
training anyway.
Yeah.
But that goes back to like if we're keeping in mind all the time that like first we learn how to train, right, which is what we talked about last time, and then we're training to train. A really good way to manage this like training to train block is to have some ideas of what are your training to win sets that you really
Mm,
like to do, right? Like
mhm.
what's a set that you're like, when I nail that set, I
I
know that
feel
I'm ready
yeah.
to race. And again, pick the sport, pick the
Mhm.
event, pick the distance, whatever that like key set is, the one that you're going to do like 2 or 3 weeks out that is going to go like, check the box, did that, I'm ready now. Then it's kind of like, well, then take that set, work backwards from it, like make it a little easier, make it a little shorter, make the recoveries a little longer, like modify it in a way where you're like building, 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 and then you give the big set. And then if you did it right and you built up to it appropriately, then you nail the big set, feel really good about it, rest and recover, adapt to the set, and then boom, go to do your race and execute your race. And that's the dream scenario, right? Like that's how like
Right,
we would
right.
do it if we were controlling all the metrics, but we would not just jump into the race specific workouts in week 2.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I completely agree. And I think there's been a little bit of challenge, at least in my some of my coaching relationship. Not it's not a challenge in the coaching relationship. But the athletes that I am working with have been in this. Some of them have been in the sport for a very long time, and they're sort of in this place of like not racing as frequently, maybe stepping away from racing, not sure if they're going to race, like kind of in that gray area. And so some of that makes it in my mind. I still think it's a fun place to be. I have told athletes, I don't care if you're gonna race or not race. Like, I care that you're committed to your health and understanding yourself and wanting to progress in some way, right? Like for the most part, I guess I might take someone on that's like literally fine baseline, right? But usually people, like I want to get faster for my group rides or I want to increase my bike volume or I want to, a lot of people will say I want to stay fit enough to then decide if I want to race a 70.3 or maybe a half marathon. And so with that guidance, I think it's a fun place to stay, right? Like you have a lot more flexibility and you can do a true, threshold block. You could do a true swim block, right? Like, I mean, the sky's the limit really, in terms of addressing your weaknesses and having some fun
Well,
with your
time is the
strengths.
limit for most
Well,
people,
time.
but like yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. As long as there's no timeline on a race though, right? Like there is
Hmm.
time constraints of like job, family, career, but yeah, which is that's kind of another maybe topic, I guess, in terms of like what do you then focus on if you're limited in time, right? And so there's something I was going to say about I still feel that there are athletes though that without a race on the schedule don't have the same motivation or like focus or
There's like a
and
sense of urgency of
I
like
see
if
yeah.
I yeah, I have to do
Yeah.
this because like I
Yeah,
have this thing that I'm preparing for.
yeah, which I've not really understood because I don't have that same philosophy. Like, for me, it's always been a loving to move my body and train. I really love training. I do love racing as well, but I could go years without racing. I mean, I have, and I still move my body. I still, have goals and fun things to do, right? So it's not been, a real driver for me. I don't know. Do you have experience with that? Like your athletes that and I'm not gonna say all my athletes are this way. I think they're probably split. I have some athletes that are fine to continue to train and push themselves and enjoy the process. They usually have better race results too when they do decide to race, versus
Yeah.
my athletes that are very kind of scattered and not sure and like, I need a race. I think there's a feeling of I need a race to train.
Hmm.
And maybe this is a separate issue for another podcast, right? Is like, what's your reason to do these things? And I've often found that some athletes maybe don't even enjoy the training, right? But they love to race. And so that's a hard place for them. And it's also a hard place for me because I don't have a good I don't have the same, I can't identify it with it, right? And while I try to adapt to my coaching style to many different types of athletes, it's sometimes hard because I'm like, I can't be your motivator to get you on the bike, right? To make sure you're staying healthy, right? Like I'm not that type of coach. I'm not a cheerleader, right? Like I can't be in your ear. But yeah, I mean, do you have that same like? Do you work with athletes that you find or you have observed that really don't maybe enjoy the training, but they enjoy the racing and they're racing frequently, and so they're for it's. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't even know what question I'm asking you, Michelle. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. What's your experience?
So I know the athlete that you're talking about, and I do have a couple that I'm working with currently right now. And this is what I'll say. Those athletes need a race on the calendar in order to be motivated to train. But the reality is, even when the race is on the calendar, they're not that motivated to train.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so like the race is there, or like if there's not a race there, the training calendar is like just almost
Right.
red across, you know what I mean? They just,
Right.
it's so hard to train. Like I need a race to motivate me. And then pretty much universally, the race gets put on the calendar and they're training. It might be good for like a week or two, right? Like because the immediate excitement of like, I signed up for the race, you know, but then like life takes over and all of the same excuses of like why they weren't training before tend to creep right back in. And so I would say that my experience with those athletes that need a race to motivate them is that they're not the athletes that have long-term really high success rates,
Yeah. I would
right?
agree.
Like the
Yeah.
athletes that are
Yeah.
going to like race at a high level for a really long time and be really happy and satisfied with like their journey as an endurance athlete,
Mhm.
they are universally the athletes who love to train. And the athletes that love to train are the athletes that will prioritize training, the athletes that will arrange their lives around training, the ones that schedule it in and like won't schedule a haircut ever at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning because like, well, I
Right.
ride my bike on Saturday mornings. You know what I mean? So like we have to
Right.
find another time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just in
Yeah.
their head, Saturday morning is not an available time, even if it's 3 months from now, it's not an available time for a
Mhm.
haircut because I
Mhm.
will be riding my bike at that time, right? Or you're trying to schedule a
Yeah.
massage. Like you would not schedule a massage at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning because like that's when I do my long runs. So what about 4 p.m.? It's 4 p.m. You know, can I schedule it then? Like it's that kind of thing of like, it's a systems thinking
Mhm.
of like where training is prioritized in their brains in a way where they are not scheduling other stuff that gets in the way of they because they just know that even if I don't know what the session is because coach hasn't written it in yet, I know I'm going to be riding my bike or I know
Right.
that's when swim practice is or I know and so like I won't do that. And I find that typically the athletes that only train when a race is on the schedule don't think in those terms.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. Yeah, I think that there's yeah, that there's it's this is almost like getting into the psychology a little bit more about why, the whys, but I definitely agree, and I think well, Joel Friel is on Substack now, and I did read one of his articles recently. I can't remember the name of it, but he identified two things that across the board the same for high performing athletes, and it was consistency and coaching. So, um, I don't disagree. I think that but there's also this love. I think there's a love of doing the thing. And so if you're in that realm of people that are kind of on the fence, maybe like you do feel like you kind of need a race, 'cause you don't really enjoy the training. Maybe it's that you need a different style of training. You need a coach. And I think a coach can help for accountability. It's not to say I don't hold athletes accountable. I do, but I also am very clear that like if you're someone that's really not motivated to train, I'm not doing a lot of group sessions. It might be better for them to find an
Yeah.
in-person coach that's going to run in-group
Yeah.
sessions that
Yeah.
they need to show up to. And that's not me. So yeah. But but yeah. kind of gets into also some of my athletes that I've worked with in the past that will want to see the plan. They want to see the plan. I'm like, why? Because you're going to be running on Saturday mornings if you're doing a marathon or Sunday mornings. So, anyways, that's a whole nother topic, I think,
Yeah.
of the planning component.
I can see though the wanting to like even a really motivated athlete that's going to like see the whole thing and they want to because it might help them to go like, oh, that's the big key workout that I
Mm,
need to be able to do 3 weeks out from the big race. Like I need to be able to like do a 90-mile bike ride with 3 times 30 minutes, like or whatever, like that the
hmm
session's going to be, and then I'm going to run 6 miles off that bike. That sounds crazy and impossible right now. Like, yep. And we're going to build up to that. Right. And like, here's how it's going to go, which means that if you have that in your head, that like, that's the workout that I'm going to need to be able to do, then it helps in like the 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 weeks prior
Sure.
when,
Yeah.
you're just doing like the 60-mile easy rides where you're just trying to like, build that
hmm
base and then you're going up to 70 and then you're going to 80 and it's still all easy. We're not adding any intensity yet. And then we're going to add and build the intensity in. And that can be helpful to know that like, I will say there were times where if it's if you're with a new coach that you haven't worked with before, and so you haven't been through like a whole build
hmm
with that coach, and so you don't know how that coach is going to like what do key workouts look like in
hmm
that coach's mind for that particular
hmm
race or whatever. It can be helpful to know that like that's a big meaty session that I'm going to have to do, and
hmm
so these sessions now are building up to that, and maybe it's just like a
Sure.
comfort thing, because this is what I'll say: when I know that the harder work is coming, I'm way more patient with doing the easy work and building up to
hmm
it. Right.
Yeah.
Versus like sometimes the easy work can be really tedious and you're like, is this going to get harder? I mean, like they're going to give me a harder
hmm
session, right? Like at some point this is
Yeah.
going to get harder. And like when you know it's coming, I feel like it's easier to be patient in the moment to to be
hmm
executing and check the box, check the box, check the box. An analogy that I use with athletes is like, those big, hard, the meaty sessions, the ones that are going to be like take grit, the ones that you have to like mentally prepare for, the ones that you really need to be on top of your feeling and you need to sleep right the night before and like all of that. Those workouts are like making withdrawals from your account. And so like my analogy is like using a bank account. So like all of those easy runs, all the easy swims, all the like the lower than threshold efforts that you're doing and pick the sport is like making a deposit into your account. And I'm depositing more, I'm
hmm
depositing more, I'm depositing more. And then like on the day where I'm gonna go to the track and run intervals, or I'm gonna go and do like these, race pace efforts or whatever, like that's actually gonna be a withdrawal.
hmm hmm
And so if you're doing those sessions all the time and you're withdrawing and you're withdrawing and you're withdrawing, and then like you get to race day and you're
Yeah.
like,
You got nothing. Yeah.
I'm overdrawn here, right? Like I'm bankrupt. I
Yeah.
don't have anything to pull from because I did too many key workouts in training, too many withdrawals and not enough deposits. And so instead, if you're like deposit, 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 and then careful about when you're withdrawing, that I'm only withdrawing on purpose. So like taking an easy run that should have been a deposit and being like, I feel really good today, so I'm going to run hill repeats. And so then end up making it a withdrawal instead of a deposit. Then it's like you get to your key day and you're empty and then really frustrated because like I worked so hard in training.
Right. And that's when you,
Like, yeah, you worked
yeah.
so hard. I know you did. And like you left
And
your
yeah.
race out there 2 weeks
Right.
before because like you got antsy. And I specifically said no faster than this. And you felt good and you went faster and it felt great. And don't worry, coach, I felt great. I'm glad you felt great. But like, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well, and
lost
then,
your race to make a
yep.
withdrawal like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's an analogy that I really like that again, I think it helps with the psychology around being patient with the easy workouts and also like the consistency of them, right? Like where you think you're like, oh, it's just another 40-minute run. And if I'm going to skip one, I'll just skip the 40-minute easy run. But if you do, and which sometimes is fine, right? Like sometimes it's like not the end of the world. But like when it comes down to it at the end, if you're trying to make your withdrawal and you skipped a 40-minute easy run every week, then your account is just not as big. You're not as wealthy as
Absolutely.
you would have been if you would have done all of those consistent deposits, and then you don't have as much to spend on race day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Completely agree. I think the only times that I have struggled with showing the athlete the longer term plan, the bigger workouts, there's often a feeling if I have to adjust those big
Mhm.
sessions because the other weeks preceding weeks did not go as planned, there's definitely a more mental navigation that I have to do with the athlete on I understand that, this was the key session, but, you got sick or you had to travel for work or, like the training just didn't go the way we had thought it would. But you're still like, again, you have to accept where you are, right? And continue to move from there instead of, it's great planning. It's great. And it can be very comforting to try to back out, right? Like, this is what I want. So this is where I need to be. But again, that's kind of fantasy land versus this is where I am today, right? Like, you can try to combine, and the best, when you're in a planning phase is like to try to combine the two, right? And then obviously lengthening the time that it might be required to get to where you want to be given where you are right now. So that's kind of
Mhm.
why I sometimes don't drop in the bigger sessions or why I just say, "Look, you're gonna have a long ride or you're gonna have a long run. The details are still in development, because we're not sure how fit you will be at that time." And then, of course, the question is, "Well, what fitness do I need?" It's like, well, again, it's a
As much
little
as you can build.
as much as yeah, exactly, as much as you can build. Yeah. Yeah, I always I only worked with 2 coaches when I was racing, and I think maybe the first go around with Ironman, I probably did ask for to see because I was totally new. After that, I just trusted. Like, I just trusted they would give me the
Yeah.
work, and I think with Lucho, like, I just trusted that he was gonna get me fit as I could possibly be under the constraints that I had, my life, my recovery, how old I was, all that. And, yeah, I never needed to see the sessions. I never needed to even when I go to camps, there's a great example of training with my very good friend Ellen, and I think she struggled with this a little bit more at the time than I did of she needed to know, felt and the whole camp was designed around pushing because she was going to Kona, pushing her outside her comfort zone, and so the whole premise was like, we didn't know what we were doing on the day. We just showed up ready to go. I love that. I love to just show up and have the coach hand it to me. I mean, what a magic, right? Like, just it brought me back to high school days where you kind of knew you'd have some intensity on certain days, right? You're gonna be on the track, so you know you're gonna be running hard. But you didn't really know the session. You just showed up ready to work and hope that your stomach stays down. And that was I don't think she'd mind that she struggled with her stomach. And so this was to test her fueling strategies. This was to test, being adaptable to different conditions.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was a ton of fun, in that one particular camp, and she'd be like, "What do you think we're doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "You don't care?" I'm like, "No." Like, I just go with it. I'm fine. I'm here to train and work hard. I just felt like it was, a blessing to not have to worry about all my other life stuff. I just had to
Yeah.
train. That's all you gotta do.
Well, I think there's so like sort of goes along with that. I feel like there there's some athletes that have a need or desire to control more,
Yeah.
right? And there's other athletes that are just like, I'll just like I can let it go and just I'm ready to manage whatever it is I need to manage. I, I don't want this to like come across the wrong way, but I feel like the athletes who the fitter you are, I feel like it's easier to let go of some of the control, right? Like if you're really fit and really confident and you know that like I have a massive base, like I'm able to do just about anything, so I'm not really worried about what the session is because I'm sure that whatever the session is I'm going to be able to handle it. And there's
Mhm.
like an inner confidence that comes with that. And I don't think that all athletes have that, even if they have earned it, right? Like it can be the case that there's athletes that like, look, you've done all the work. Like you've been consistent, you've done the easy work. Your easy work was easy enough. Like you've done some key sessions that are building up, like you're ready to handle more work. When they still don't feel like they're ready, that is probably a
Yeah.
psychological issue
Yeah.
that it goes beyond training, that is a like almost like it's never enough. And that will be the same athlete that will go like break 10 hours in Kona and be like disappointed because like it just wasn't good enough because like
Right.
somebody else went
Right.
940 and I only went 952.
Right.
Right. And so I'm not good enough. Like that's the same mindset of like it's never enough.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
athletes will then always feel like they're never good enough. And so the sessions can scare them,
Mhm.
more than if you're just like, I believe in myself, I believe in my ability to do it.
Mhm.
And there's a
Yeah.
degree of like self confidence in there
Mhm.
somewhere
Yeah. Yeah.
that likely stems from way outside of triathlon,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Totally. I totally agree.
Like
Yeah.
something outside of that. So,
Yeah.
and so triathlon, I feel like there's different reasons people do triathlon in endurance sports
Yeah.
in general. Like
Yeah.
some of them are just really curious about the challenge and like, I wonder if I can do that, and like, and the big challenge is really interesting. And I think that others are probably more along the lines of like, I need to prove that I'm good enough,
Mhm.
whatever that means.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
kind of also think that the athletes who approach it with that mindset, and I can say this because like I was one of them, like there will never be a finish line that will give you the satisfaction of feeling like you're good enough if you don't feel like you're good enough on the start line,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really, I mean, that is a challenging place to be. And I know.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did that, right? And versus like if you feel good enough at the start line, you're going to feel good enough at the finish, even if the race didn't go as well. I mean, you can still be disappointed in the race, like that wasn't what I was hoping for. I thought I was going to do better than that, but the recovery, the mental, emotional recovery will be way quicker because you're like, that was disappointing. Like I'm still a good, worthy person.
Mhm.
People still love me. This isn't a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
condemnation of my self worth or like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and then they'll just recover faster physically and mentally if they're super fit, from a baseline level. But I will say my favorite place to be, and when people ask me now, like, what are you training for? Why are you still training? Because I call it training. I guess it's exercise. It's a hybrid of
In between.
exercise and
Yeah.
training, what I'm doing right now. But like my goal is always like, I just want to be fit enough to be able to like jump into a group ride and not worry about how long is it going to be, how hilly is it going to be, who's going to be there, how fast is it going to be. Like and I've always wanted that level of fitness because I remember in the beginning, kind of like I would suss out group rides. Like if it's Friday night and I hear about this group that's going on Saturday, and then if I start asking how long are they going, who's going to be there, and what I mean by who's going to be there is like how fast is it going to be, am I going to be able to keep up, right? Like I remember those feelings, and I didn't love that. And I'm like,
Right.
I want to be like fit enough that even if there's like a big group going and it's going to be long and it's going to be fast and it's going to be hard, that at least I have the capacity to hang sort of. And even if I do get dropped, like my mental state is such that I like, it's okay. They're gonna stop at that 7-Eleven, and I know where they're stopping, and I'll show up there and be good, and then, let's try
Mhm.
again. And, I like that second scenario better,
Yeah.
and so part of the reason that I'm training as much as I am right now is because, like, I want to be able to go for bike rides with athletes that I coach, right, and not
Mhm.
have them drop me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I wanna be able to do that. So I have to, and some of them are pretty fast. So I'm like, I have to maintain like a reasonable level of fitness so that I
Mhm.
can, jump in and not worry about
Mhm.
those things. And that's my like personal training to train right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm training to hike with my dogs right now, and that's what I always love to do. And you might think, it probably doesn't take that much fitness. Actually, it does.
Yeah, they're big
When you got
dogs.
I got two big dogs, and they move very fast over rough and vertical, not vertical, but steep terrain. And so, yeah, that's and just staying strong, right? Like I've realized, I think I mentioned maybe a few episodes ago, I threw my back out in early December and realizing like how much of a pain that is, not just physical, but like in my daily activities, it's it's not good to be injured, right? Like I can't split wood, I can't take my dogs for a walk. Like I live, like I can't do the things that I need to do to just have a basic like happiness in life, right? Like having a warm house. So
Yeah.
yeah, training to stay mobile very, as long as possible and to live remote as long as possible. I still
Hmm.
think about I think about racing occasionally. I don't know about triathlon though. I'm kind of over Ironman. We've talked about this, but maybe some running races, I don't know, some ultras. But but then again, as I've mentioned, like I like to be out in mountains by myself. The idea of being on trails with other people like actually makes me angry even thinking about it. So I'm like I don't think that that's probably a good fit for me, right? being in a train up the side of a mountain, I'm like, "No, that sounds horrible." I really I
Yeah.
don't I might, like, seek out some routes and then do them self-supported. That would be more fun for me, right? Than, signing up for a race,
It's too
but
bad
yeah,
you don't live near the ocean because, like, that's what channel swimming is
I
really, like,
know.
all
I
about.
know,
You know what I
that's what
mean?
you've
Like,
said.
genuinely, channel swimming
Yeah.
is like, there's no organized, and the reason you can't do that is because it's so much, like, condition dependent, right?
Right.
Where, like,
Yeah.
the boat captain is out and, like, looking at tides and looking at wind reports and
Mhm.
looking at, like, all the things and trying to decide, like, when is the route. And so all channel swimmers, I mean, a major component of channel swimming, and I'm keen to this right now because one of my channel swimmers is currently like her like window is opening next week. Like, you know, she's been training for months
Right.
and putting in big swims, like, you know, kind of every other weekend where we're looking to accumulate, you know, like 30K in 3 days kind of thing, you know, like big swimming. And, you know, her window is opening for these like channel opportunities that are coming, and she's just like dependent on the boat captain every day. And like one of the things that I'm like, as her coach, like my role right now changes to like trying to like, you know, be patient and
Mhm.
trust and know that
Mhm.
like when the time is right, the channel will open. Because she's like, when are we gonna go? Is it Friday or Saturday? Is it Friday or Saturday? I'm like, you just relax, right?
Yep.
And like let
Right.
the boat captain do it and trust the process. And like if it doesn't happen this weekend, then like we will just stay fit enough and like maybe the window opens next weekend. But like you literally can't plan it out. Like
Right.
you can
It's just
you can plan like general timelines, but you can't like which day are you gonna go? Like it depends on what the wind is doing.
yeah.
So that like adaptability, your ability to go with the flow, be
Yeah.
patient, not be living in this state of anxiety. There's a lot of energy spent, right? If you're living in this state of anxiety around
Absolutely.
that. It's
Yeah.
like totally off topic. We can so
No,
that'll go
I
back to like next time we'll talk about training to win.
but yes.
And this is what I'll say. What we should do next time too, we should bring some like training to win sets, right? Like
Yeah.
key
Yeah.
workouts.
Yeah.
And that might tie things up like in a really nice little bow, because like then when you realize that like that's when we talk about training to win, it's like those are the key sets that you're going to be doing that prepare you to excel on race day, and the level of fitness that you need to have in order just to execute that workout. Like that's what you're doing in the whole training to train phase,
Mhm.
is like
Mhm.
building your capacity to
Yep.
handle the load of the key sessions that are very race specific.
Mhm.
And so the fitter you are, the better you handle those, then you recover from them, and then that's how you set yourself up to race well.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think we should definitely do that
Cool.
next time.
Next
Cool.
time. See you
All
in two
right. Well,
weeks.
thanks. Thanks, Michelle. We will talk to you
Yeah.
soon. Okay.
Thanks. Bye.